In Atlanta, Georgia, in the humid summer of 2022, Jamar Wilson, a geneticist with warm, thoughtful eyes, observed a subtle change in his 6-year-old son, Kyle. The boy, once a whirlwind of energy racing across the backyard, had slowed. His small feet, usually pounding the grass in joyful sprints, now shuffled with an unfamiliar heaviness. Kyle's skin, which once glowed under the Georgia sun, had taken on a faint ashen hue, like a shadow creeping over a bright canvas. After games of tag or hide and seek, his breaths came in short, laboured gasps, and his eyes, though still bright, carried a flicker of exhaustion. The backyard, filled with the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming jasmine from the neighbour's garden, had always been a place of laughter. Now it seemed to hold a quiet unease, as if the air itself sensed something amiss. Jamar, whose days were spent unravelling the mysteries of DNA in a sterile lab, and felt a knot of worry tighten in his chest. He watched Kyle slump onto the porch steps, his small chest heaving, and a father's instinct stirred alongside his scientist's curiosity. Jamar's home, a cozy 2-story house on a tree-lined street, was a haven of warmth. The living room smelled of cedar from the wooden furniture and the faint sweetness of Tamika's vanilla candles. Yet that summer, a new scent lingered, an undercurrent of anxiety that clung to Jamar as he tucked Kyle into bed each night. The boy's room, adorned with posters of dinosaurs and spaceships, felt too still, the soft glow of a nightlight casting long shadows across the walls. Jamar stood by Kyle's bed, watching the rise and fall of his son's chest under a soft blue blanket, and wondered what had changed. The diagnosis came swiftly, delivered in the sterile white walls of an Atlanta clinic. The doctor's words hit like a sudden storm. Kyle had a rare genetic disease, one that passed only through the maternal line. Jamar's mind reeled. Neither his family nor Tamika's had any record of such a condition. The clinic, with its sharp smell of antiseptic and the hum of fluorescent lights, became a place of dread, each visit etching the reality deeper into Jamar's heart. Back at home, Jamar retreated to his study, a small room lined with bookshelves and cluttered with scientific journals. The air carried the rich aroma of brewed coffee, a constant companion during his late-night research. He sat at his oak desk, the surface worn smooth by years of work, and pored over medical texts. Pages turned under his fingers, each one a hope for answers, but the words blurred as his thoughts raced. The disease was an anomaly, a puzzle that didn't fit the genetic history he knew. He traced his family's lineage in his mind, recalling stories of aunts and grandparents, none touched by such an illness. Tamika's family, too, seemed free of this shadow. Yet the test results were undeniable, the data stark on the computer screen, glowing in the dim light of his study. Jamar's hands hovered over the keyboard, hesitating, as if typing the next query might unravel more than he was ready to face. Tamika moved through the house with a quiet grace, her steps soft on the hardwood floors. She prepared dinners in the kitchen, the scent of roasted vegetables and spices wafting through the air, but her usual warmth seemed dimmed. Jamar noticed her lingering glances at Kyle, her fingers tightening around a dishcloth when she thought no one saw. She said little about the diagnosis, her silence a weight that pressed against Jamar's growing unease. He wondered if she knew something he didn't, a fragment of the past she hadn't shared. The thought gnawed at him as he sat in his study, surrounded by the musty smell of old paper and the faint buzz of his laptop. Kyle's laughter, once a constant melody in the house, now came in brief bursts, overshadowed by moments of stillness. Jamar watched his son sleep, the boy's small hand clutching a stuffed rocket ship, and felt a surge of determination. He would find the answer, no matter how deep he had to dig into the science or how many nights he spent awake, chasing the truth hidden in Kyle's blood. Jamar's nights bled into dawn, his eyes fixed on the glowing screen of his laptop in the cramped study of their Atlanta home. The room, tucked at the back of the house, carried the musty scent of old books stacked haphazardly on oak shelves, their pages yellowed from years of use. A single desk lamp cast a warm amber light across scattered medical journals, their edges curling like autumn leaves. Jamar's fingers, calloused from years of lab work, trembled slightly as he scrolled through the genetic data of his 6-year-old son, Kyle. The sequences, stark and unyielding, revealed something impossible. Fragments of DNA that didn't belong to him or Tamika. The disease ravaging Kyle's small body, a rare condition tied to the maternal line, should not have existed in their family. Yet the numbers on the screen told a different story, one that twisted Jamar's heart with both dread and fascination. The house was quiet, save for the distant hum of cicadas outside and the occasional creak of the hardwood floors settling in the Georgia heat. Jamar sipped cold coffee, its bitter tang a faint comfort as he pored over the anomaly. The foreign genetic markers in Kyle's blood were like uninvited guests, their presence a silent threat to his son's fading vitality. Jamar's mind raced, retracing every lesson from his years as a geneticist, every lecture hall filled with the sterile smell of whiteboard markers and ambition. He stumbled across a reference to chimerism in an old journal, a condition where one body housed two distinct sets of DNA, as if two souls shared the same skin. The idea felt like a spark in the dark, both thrilling and terrifying. Could Kyle carry the echo of another life within him? The thought lingered, heavy as the humid air pressing against the study's window. Downstairs, Kyle played in the living room, his toy cars scattered across the rug like a miniature city. His cough, sharp and persistent, cut through the soft clatter of plastic wheels. Each sound pierced Jamar, a reminder of the urgency driving his sleepless nights. He watched from the staircase, unseen, as Kyle's small hands pushed a red truck, his movements slower than they once were. The boy's laughter, once a bright melody filling the house, now came in fragile bursts, overshadowed by fatigue. Tamika moved through the kitchen, her silhouette framed by the glow of pendant lights. She gripped a dishcloth, twisting it absently, her shoulders hunched as if carrying an invisible weight. The air carried the faint scent of her lavender lotion, a scent Jamar associated with her warmth, but now it mingled with an unspoken tension. She avoided his gaze when he passed through, her silence louder than any words. Jamar returned to his study, ordering more tests from a lab across town. The process felt like grasping at shadows, each result a piece of a puzzle he wasn't sure he wanted to solve. The room grew warmer, the Atlanta summer seeping through the walls, blending with the smell of ink and paper. He thought of Kyle's smile, the way it lit up the backyard during better days, and of Timka's quiet strength, now fraying at the edges. The truth was close. He could feel it, like the faint pulse of a heartbeat under his fingertips in the lab, but it slipped through his grasp, elusive and taunting, as the cicadas sang their endless song outside, and the weight of his son's fading health pressed heavier on his soul. The test results arrived in Jamar's inbox late one evening, the soft ping of his laptop cutting through the stillness of his Atlanta study. The screen's glow illuminated the room, casting shadows across shelves cluttered with worn medical journals and a half-empty coffee mug, its bitter aroma lingering in the air. The data confirmed what Jamar had both feared and suspected. Kyle was a chimera, his body a silent host to the cells of a second embryo, absorbed long before birth. The foreign DNA carried a mutation, a hidden flaw that explained the rare disease stealing his son's strength. Jamar leaned back in his chair, the creak of old wood echoing in the quiet house, as his mind raced to piece together the implications. The humid Georgia night pressed against the window, the distant hum of crickets, a faint reminder of the world beyond his spiraling thoughts. Jamar's memory flickered to a moment years ago, when Tamika had returned from an early ultrasound appointment. The clinic, with its sterile smell of antiseptic and the faint hum of machinery, had been a place of hope then. She had mentioned, almost in passing, that the doctor saw signs of 2 embryos, but by the next visit, only one remained. The words had slipped by, unremarkable at the time, lost in the joy of expecting Kyle. Now those words clawed at Jamar's heart, each syllable a piece of a puzzle that had been there all along. The vanished twin, a ghost in Kyle's blood, had left behind a legacy of illness. Jamar's chest tightened, not just with the weight of scientific discovery, but with the ache of a father watching his child fade. In Kyle's room, the air carried the sweet, crisp scent of apple shampoo, a remnant of his evening bath. The boy slept under a soft blue blanket, his small chest rising and falling unevenly, a stuffed rocket ship tucked against his side. The room, adorned with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, felt heavy with an unspoken tension, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Jamar stood in the doorway, his shadow falling across the floor, and watched his son, the love he felt warring with a growing sense of helplessness. Downstairs, Tamika sat on the living room couch, her fingers twisting a woven bracelet, its beads worn from years of nervous habit. The room smelled of her lavender lotion, a scent that once brought Jamar comfort but now underscored the distance between them. Her eyes, red-rimmed and glistening, betrayed the guilt she carried for dismissing the doctor's fleeting mention of a second embryo. Jamar returned to the study, his hands clenched into fists as he grappled with a surge of anger, not at Tamika, but at the cruel twist of fate that had woven this tragedy into their son's very being. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and the faint buzz of the laptop fan, a reminder of the relentless march of time. He thought of Kyle's laughter, how it used to fill the backyard, now replaced by the sharp sound of his cough echoing through the house. Tamika's silence weighed on him, her guilt a mirror to his own fear. Yet beneath the anger and confusion, Jamar's heart beat with a singular purpose: to save his son. The truth was now clear, but the path forward remained shrouded, as uncertain as the Atlanta skyline fading into the summer dusk. Jamar's search for a cure consumed him, his days and nights blending into a relentless cycle within the confines of his Atlanta study. The small room, nestled at the back of the house, was a sanctuary of sorts, its air thick with the scent of ink from open journals and the warm, earthy aroma of polished wood from the desk where he worked. Papers sprawled across the surface, their edges curling under the weight of humidity that seeped through the windows, carrying the faint buzz of summer cicadas from the Georgia night. Jamar pored over scientific articles, his eyes scanning dense text under the soft glow of a desk lamp, its light pooling like a beacon in the darkness. Colleagues from the university had suggested an experimental therapy, one designed to suppress the foreign cells within Kyle's body. But the approach was untested, a gamble with risks that gnawed at Jamar's resolve. Each article he read offered a sliver of hope. Yet the warnings of potential side effects loomed like shadows threatening to engulf his fragile optimism. The house, once a vibrant hub of Kyle's laughter and Tamika's humming, felt colder now, despite the warm glow of pendant lights casting patterns across the living room walls. Kyle's drawings, pinned to the fridge with colourful magnets, depicted spaceships and smiling suns, their crayon lines a painful reminder of his fading energy. In the kitchen, Tamika moved with a mechanical slowness, chopping vegetables for dinner as the scent of rosemary and garlic filled the air. Her hands, once steady, trembled slightly, and her gaze drifted to the window, where the Atlanta skyline shimmered faintly in the dusk. Her silence carried a weight of unspoken guilt, her thoughts seemingly lost in a maze of what-ifs. Jamar caught glimpses of her from the hallway, her silhouette framed by the kitchen's warm light, and felt a pang of longing for the days when their home pulsed with ease and joy. Kyle, though weakened, found moments of resilience. In the living room, he knelt on the rug, stacking wooden blocks into wobbly towers, his small fingers deliberate, despite the fatigue that shadowed his movements. His smile, fleeting but bright, pierced Jamar's heart, a fleeting spark that fueled his determination. The boy's cough, sharp and persistent, echoed through the house, a sound that clung to the walls like the antiseptic smell that followed them home from the hospital. The first rounds of the experimental therapy had begun, administered in a sterile clinic room where the air was sharp with the tang of disinfectant and the hum of medical machines. Jamar sat by Kyle's side during each session, watching the IV drip with a mix of hope and dread, the clear liquid a symbol of their fragile fight. Yet the improvements were faint. Kyle's colour improved slightly, but his energy waned, and the disease held its ground. Time slipped away like sand through Jamar's fingers, each day marked by the relentless tick of the clock on his desk. The hospital visits became a ritual, the drive through Atlanta's bustling streets, a blur of honking cars and the heavy scent of exhaust mingling with blooming magnolias. Jamar felt the weight of each moment, his scientist's mind wrestling with the limits of medicine, his father's heart aching for a miracle. The study, with its cluttered shelves and the faint creak of the floorboards, became his battleground, a place where he fought an invisible enemy. He knew the therapy was not enough, that a bolder path lay ahead, uncharted and daunting, but the image of Kyle's tower of blocks, standing defiant despite its fragility, pushed him to keep searching. The hospital room, bathed in the sterile glow of fluorescent lights, felt like a world apart from the warmth of Jamar's Atlanta home. Doctors had laid out a final option, a surgical procedure to extract the foreign cells of the vanished twin from Kyle's body. The proposal hung heavy in the air, its promise of healing laced with peril, as the risk of losing Kyle loomed large. Jamar sat by his son's bedside, the vinyl chair creaking under his weight, his gaze fixed on Kyle's sleeping face. The boy's features, softened by the dim light of a bedside lamp, seemed almost peaceful, his small chest rising evenly beneath a thin hospital blanket. The air carried the sharp tang of antiseptic mingling with the faint metallic hum of medical monitors, their steady beeps a constant reminder of the fragility of the moment. Kyle's hand, warm and small, rested in Jamar's, its slight grip anchoring him to a love that outweighed his fear. Outside, the Atlanta night buzzed with distant traffic, the city's pulse filtering through the hospital window as a warm summer breeze carried the scent of blooming magnolias. Jamar's mind churned, replaying the doctor's words, their clinical tone unable to mask the gravity of the choice. The procedure, experimental and uncharted, offered a chance to halt the disease's advance, but the odds were stark. Failure could steal Kyle away forever. Jamar's heart ached as he traced the curve of his son's cheek, the boy's skin still tinged with that unnatural ashen hue. Memories flooded in. Kyle racing through the backyard, his laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves, his small hands clutching a kite string as it danced against the Georgia sky. Those moments felt distant now, swallowed by the sterile reality of the hospital room, where time seemed to slow, each second heavy with consequence. Tamika had lingered in the hallway earlier, her silhouette framed by the glass door of the ward. Her hands twisted the hem of her sweater, a nervous habit that betrayed her dread. She had pleaded for caution, her eyes searching Jamar's for a safer path, one that wouldn't gamble their son's life. But Jamar, burdened by the weight of his knowledge as a geneticist and the fierce love of a father, felt drawn to the surgery. The experimental therapy they had tried had faltered, its fleeting improvements fading like morning mist. The hospital, with its polished floors and the faint scent of cleaning solution, had become a second home, each visit etching deeper lines of worry into Jamar's face. He sat through the night, the monitor's rhythmic beeps blending with the distant hum of the city, his mind painting vivid images of Kyle healthy again, running through Piedmont Park, his laughter echoing under the oak trees. The hours before the surgery stretched endlessly, the weight of the decision pressing against Jamar's chest. He held Kyle's hand, feeling the warmth of his son's skin, and let his thoughts drift to a future where Kyle could grow strong, where the backyard would again ring with his joy. The hospital room, with its stark white walls and the faint hum of machinery, felt like a crucible, forging Jamar's resolve. He had chosen the surgery, knowing the risk could shatter everything, but the hope of seeing Kyle whole again burned brighter than his fear. As dawn crept through the window, casting a soft glow across Kyle's sleeping form, Jamar clung to that hope, a fragile beacon guiding him through the uncertainty that lay ahead. The surgery had not been a complete cure, but it carved a fragile path toward stability for Kyle, granting him days unshadowed by the relentless grip of his illness. Jamar and Tamika, their hearts tempered by months of fear, learned to cherish each moment with their son, savouring the small victories that marked his slow recovery. They left their old Atlanta home, trading its cramped familiarity for a new house on the city's outskirts, where a sprawling garden stretched beneath towering oak trees. The air there carried the sweet, heady scent of blooming magnolias, their petals drifting across the lawn in the warm Georgia evenings. The new home, with its wide porch and creaking wooden floors, became a sanctuary, its walls absorbing the echoes of a family rebuilding itself from the brink. Kyle, though still under the watchful eyes of doctors, found his spark again. His laughter, once a rare guest, returned as he chased a soccer ball across the grass, his small legs wobbly but determined. The backyard, bathed in the golden light of late summer, rang with his giggles, blending with the distant hum of Atlanta's evening traffic, and the soft rustle of leaves. His skin, no longer ashen, caught the sunlight, though his movements carried a careful deliberation, a reminder of the fragility that lingered. Jamar watched from the porch, his coffee mug warm in his hands, the rich aroma grounding him as he marveled at his son's resilience. The boy's energy, though tempered, was a beacon, pulling Jamar away from the sterile world of his laboratory and into the warmth of these fleeting moments. Tamika moved through the new house with a quiet grace, her hands no longer twisting nervously but tending to small tasks, watering potted herbs on the windowsill, their sharp, earthy scent filling the kitchen, or arranging Kyle's drawings on the fridge. Her eyes, once heavy with guilt, now softened when she watched Kyle play, a tentative hope settling into her features. The living room, with its worn leather couch and the faint smell of cedar from a nearby bookshelf, became a place of gathering. An old record player spun jazz records, their soulful notes weaving through the air, mingling with the laughter that spilled from the garden. Tamika's touch lingered on Jamar's arm as they stood together, watching Kyle, their shared silence a testament to a bond mended through hardship. Jamar, reshaped by the ordeal, stepped back from the relentless pace of his research, the study that had once been his refuge, with its ink-stained journals and flickering laptop screen, felt less urgent now. Instead, he began meeting with other parents in Atlanta, sharing Kyle's story in community centres, where the air smelled of polished wood and brewing coffee. His words, simple but earnest, offered hope to families grappling with their own medical mysteries. His scientist's precision softened by a father's empathy. The new house became a haven, its garden alive with the buzz of bees and the scent of sun-warmed grass. As Jamar watched Kyle kick his ball under the magnolias, he understood that the true strength lay not in unravelling every secret of the body, but in the love that held his family together, a light that burned steady against the shadows of the past.